So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's open forum about introduction to school system, as I call it, school days or school days or school days, however you want to read that. Um, we're a small group, and I knew it would be a small group. We invited Olim with children who made Aliyah in this past couple of months. And the goal of this evening's presentation is really twofold. One is to give you a short presentation about the school system in Israel, and hopefully, answer some of those questions or explain some of those things that you might not have understood. And of course, open it up to questions and answers. But also, a really important goal is that so that by the end of this presentation, you'll know who to turn to and when to turn to us. So first, I will introduce myself. My name is Tzippi Oppenheimer. I am a senior advisor in the MBN Post Aliyah and Government Advocacy Division. And I am joined this evening by my wonderful colleague, Aviva. Aviva
Hi,
is also
everybody.
a part of our Post Aliyah and Government Advocacy Department. We're also known as the Answers Department. Either any of those names we will answer to you. And Viva also wears the hat of our post-secondary education specialist. And in that capacity, too, she's joining us this evening. So, what I'm going to ask is you do have the option to write in the chat, but especially since we're a small group, what I'm going to ask is try to keep your questions for the end. It's not a very long presentation, and maybe and for a couple times throughout the presentation I'll say, are there questions now? But of course we will have a chance for open questions and answers at the end. So try and keep your questions unless it's something that you absolutely don't understand because of it's something that you're not understanding what I'm talking about without asking the question. I know that it's late at night, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate you joining, and even if we're not forcing anybody to go on camera. We know that's not necessarily easy, but if you do have a chance, even for a minute, just so we can see your faces, that's terrific. That would be helpful. In addition, you will receive an email follow up with a recording to this session, as well as with the slides themselves. So, and the slides will be and any links we share, that will be also sent so that you don't really have to spend your time taking notes as far as that goes. Okay. So let's just dive in and begin. Okay. So, just as a little bit of background, because I think it's important to understand a little bit how I'm sorry, I'm putting my drink down here. How the education system works in Israel. There are public education laws that do a compulsory education law that does it was actually set in 1949, right after the establishment of the state, although it has evolved greatly over the years. And the basic tenets of that law is compulsory education for children between the ages of 3 to 18, which is really what we know as Gan Chovah, which is compulsory kindergarten, through 12th grade. You might raise eyebrows. It's compulsory free education. Some people might raise eyebrows at the free. We'll talk about that in a second. But that is the basic law in Israel. I will add that there's also a compulsory special education law. We're not talking about special ed tonight, but it's also compulsory and it actually goes to the age of 21. That means that the state is obligated to provide frameworks for your children during those ages, frameworks meaning schools. Okay, and in the special education law, required to provide the proper school system or housing or
Framework.
framework, educational framework for your child in those ages. It is free, although there are fees. The fees are regulated by the Ministry of Education. They're not supposed to go above a certain amount of money. They include fees for trips, they include fees for class parties in certain instances, certain book schools that share books, certain insurances, small insurances, and things like that. And the fees should not be very high. They range anywhere from a couple hundred to maybe 900. The older your children get, the more the fees are because you have more. A lot of it is spent on the hikes and the tiyulim, but it should not be more than that. I will say that some of the school, we'll talk a second about the various types of schools. And what I'm talking about when I'm saying free, that's for the state schools. There are some semi-private or private schools, and those, of course, are not free. And schools with dormitories and the dormitory board and room are not free as well.
Also, Sippy, I don't know if you're going to get into it. Sorry for interrupting.
Mhm.
But there are some schools that have like a long day program, and there is additional payment for that. Some of the basic school hours are till like 12 o'clock every day. Some schools have extended days, some days of the week till 2 or even till 4. And there is a extra fee for that, but it's not your option. It's like the whole school does it. And you can't say, okay, I want my kid to be part of it or not. If the kid's in the school, you're going to have to pay those extra fees for the extended day.
I will, and thank you very much. I will also say that some of you might be saying, "Oh, I didn't pay any fees." That's because some schools or some, it's not the school's choice. Some of the cities, the municipalities, the regional areas do waive those fees in the first year. Sometimes it's done by the municipality or the city, and sometimes it's part of monies that they receive for Olim. But that would be a first year, and certainly for families who have a number of children, if they have hardship, they do offer kind of scholarships for families that have hardship cases. You would need to discuss that with the school. Okay, so the school system is divided into two, but it's really divided into more than that. And you might have heard these phrases being thrown around. There is in Israel, public schools are divided in, or the public schools are divided into the public or the state secular and the state religious, or the public secular and the public religious. Unlike the U.S., where any religious school is a private school, in Israel that is not the case. And the terms that are used are mamlachti or mamlachti dati. They both start with state, which is the same thing as public, and that when it's religious, it has the word religious added to it. Now, within those two types of schools, the school streams, you do have a variety. The non-religious public schools can also be, they could just be regular, so to speak, just nothing, without anything else hyphenated after their name. Or they can be a democratic school. There's a bunch of those hanging around. There's something called Tali, which is Tigbur Limudei Yadut, which means you have some extra um, hours of teach
Judaic.
of Judaic, that's the word, Judaic teachings. There's anthroposophic schools. There are something called Mishalev, which are schools that include religious and non-religious kids, which is not the norm in Israel. Those schools are usually all under the mamlachti, under the state secular school system, even if they have different flavors to them. Then there is the mamad, okay, which is the mamlachti dati. Mamad, that's the acronym, and that's the way most people refer to it. And Ahmad is a state religious school. Again, you have the regular options, but you also have some certain flavors that might include Torani, which means that they would put even more of an emphasis on the religious studies, or Hardal, which is the different type of enhanced Torah studies. Um, the mamad, the regular state religious schools, are co-ed schools, although most of them do separate classes from a certain age, depending on the school, from third grade, from fourth grade, or another grade. It depends on the school. Whereas the Torani and the Hardali schools would be not co-ed; they would have separate buildings and, of course, separate classes. Um, then there's another school system that is the Haredi school system, and a relatively new uh, stream of schools in this is the Mamlachti Haredi, which is also known as the Mamach. If the Mamad is the Mamlachti Dati, the Mamach is the Mamlachti Haredi. Again, it's an acronym. And really, it started just a few years ago. Most of the Haredi schools, until then, all the Haredi schools until then, were semi-private, which means in Israel, it means besides the fact that it's going to cost you something more as a parent, it also means that while the school is supervised in certain ways, in other ways, the school has certain freedom. And by having that freedom in the curriculum and choosing the curriculum, it also means that they're getting less funding. And what I didn't say is any school that is defined as a mamlachti school, a state school, means that it is being supervised by the Ministry of Education, the Misrad HaChinuch. It means that the curriculum and the number of hours in each subject is also being supervised. It means that safety regulations are being supervised. Many different things are being supervised. It also gives them the full amount of budget from the state. So you have Mamlakti Haridi now. Those are schools that offer full high school matriculation. That's a big thing because other parts of the Haridi school system would offer less secular studies and would not go through the matriculation route, the track, and a child at the end of 12th grade, or when they do the matriculation exams in 11th and 12th grade, would not be taking those exams. Okay. So again, that is something that's relatively new. You find that in certain cities across the country. There are also Haredi schools that are recognized. It's called in Hebrew Mukar She'eno Rishmi, which means they're recognized, but they're unofficial. So they're not a Mamlakti school, they're not a state school. They're recognized, which means they are partially supervised by the Ministry of Education. They get partial funding, but not full funding. And in these schools, the parents would be paying more. Okay, because the school is getting less funding and also they're adding more additional hours that the parents need to fund. You will find in other schools as well that sometimes parents are paying extra for extra hours, as Aviva said, for a long day, or in other instances, sometimes I mean, I've heard all sorts of stories. Classes in Israel can go up to, I believe it's still 42. And sometimes you have schools where the classes get to 42 and the parents like, and the school's like, no, we don't have a way to make that a smaller class. And parents might add money so that they can then hire a separate teacher, or parents who want a certain level of English being taught. Those would be instances when the parents would add money, would be paying a fee so that the school could do something above what is given to them in the regular budget. Then, lastly, there's something called Mosdot Ptor, which are independent schools. Those are exempt institutions. So, even though they're recognized for the purposes of the compulsory education law, which we saw in the first slide, they're not getting funding from, I should say, they're barely getting funding from the state, and parents pay full amount. And these might be schools that are they're usually, and I don't know if you could think of other examples, but they're going to be ultra orthodox schools that are really teaching uh, not teaching secular studies. Okay, so that's just giving us an important overview of the school system. Before we move on, I am going to ask
I
if
just want
any.
to add one more thing about the different types is acceptance, whereas the public or state schools basically accept you based on availability and where you live. The non-recognized school or the recognized and not official schools can have their own rules of who they accept and their own acceptance policies.
That's a very important point. Thank you for bringing that up, Aviva. So before we go on to this next slide, I just, if somebody has a question, you can either type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself a minute and ask the question. Otherwise, we'll continue and we'll take questions at the end. Okay, so let's move
Okay.
on, Aviva.
Okay. So the support for new Olim are in a few different ways. First of all is the Sha'ot Olim, which is the sort of Opan hours. It's not the same as the adult Opan, which is much more hardcore, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Sha'ot Olim are up to 6 hours. Oh, excuse me, up to 6 hours a week, and it's just during the first year of school. The school receives X amount of money for the first, I believe it's the first 3 kids, and then as each kid, more kids of the same age group are added, they receive more money, which means that the school can either choose to put all the OLEC kids in together for the maximum number of hours per week, or they can decide, listen, we can't put a first grader together with a sixth grader, so they'll split the classes and have each kid receiving fewer than 6 hours, but on a more individual basis. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. Now, in order for your child to be able to receive the Sha'ot Olim, they need to be registered as an Ole Chadash with the Ministry of Education, Misrad HaChinuch. So be sure that you have given your kid's school a copy of the parent's Tudat Zehut with the Sefach. The Sefach is that folded piece of paper with your kid's ID number and as well as your address, and a copy of the family's Tudat Ole. Without these documents, your child will not be able to be registered as an Ola Hadash in the system, and they won't be getting the hours. So just double check with your school, check with your kid if they're getting the hours, double check with the school as well that they're signed up and everything is set. Now, the Sha'ot Olim are pull out during class. It's not after classes, it's during class. So I had one of my kids miss gym for the first few months of school, and then they switched it up. So he was missing something else. But learning Hebrew is very important. This is given by a specific teacher, it's not going to be like a teacher who just has a free hour. They're not going to throw the gym teacher in because he doesn't have a class during that slot. It needs to be a teacher that was specifically trained with Hebrew as a second language instruction. Um, very often this does not begin till after Sukkot. So some of you may have noticed that your kids were just sitting in class without any assistance at the beginning of the year. Hopefully everyone is receiving it right by now at this point. Um, and if there are any issues, as to be mentioned, I am the part of the education department, and I have contacts in the Ministry of Education all around the country. So if you're having any issue, you could be in touch, and I can see if we can easily iron that out. Another way of so those show olim are government mandated from the Ministry of Education. Then there's also municipality assistance. Some municipalities I know offhand of Bet Shemesh. I think Modi'in had it as well some points that have a lot of olim in the municipality that have extra support outside of classroom hours, and it'll be combined from different schools. So you can check with your municipality as well.
Uh,
Sorry, Tippy, you want to say something?
no, I just want to say not all schools are eligible for these hours.
I was going to get to that.
Okay, I'll
Yes.
be quiet.
So how we were talking, as we were speaking about the state schools and the private and the semi-private schools, in order to, and Sippy mentioned funding. So this funding for the Sha'otolim is tied to the school being a state school or a state recognized school. So if it's a completely private school, they're not going to be receiving funds for Sha'otolim, and kids in those schools will not be getting Sha'otolim hours, which means if your child is in a chinuch atzma'i school, a Haredi type school that is not connected to the Misrad chinuch, then they're not going to be receiving Sha'ot Olim through the Ministry of Education. However, the schools that do have a lot of Olim may have their own system in place. So you really just need to be proactive, speak to the child's teacher, make sure the teacher knows your child is an Ola Chadash. You might be surprised, but some teachers don't necessarily get the memo and they might think the kid is just extremely shy. So make sure your kid's teacher knows that your child's an Ole. Ask them the best way to follow up what's going on in the classroom so you know if the child is actually being taken out for the shotelim. Make sure that you have a partnership with your child's teacher to build their success. Sippy, anything you wanted to answer?
Yeah, yeah, just gonna add, I'm gonna emphasize that last point because it's important, okay? Um, you know, I really, I mean, I love teachers and I think it's an incredible profession and not a very easy profession anywhere and certainly not in Israel. Teachers and the schools won't want to do good by your child. They just have a lot of things going on. So it's really important. And you might not be used to this from, it's very different than North America, but you need to be your child's best advocate. You need to be proactive. You need to be out there. And well, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's perfectly acceptable or expected even for you to be the one to contact the teacher, for you to be the one, obviously, to find out who in the school is responsible for the Olim part of your school's of your child's education. Are there other Olim? Is there an Ole contact person, an Ole super person in charge of the Olim in the school, and so on? It's really up to you. And I'm just going to emphasize that if your child is not getting extra help, those sha'ot olim, okay? It it unfortunately, certainly wouldn't expect it to have happened before the Chagim, although some schools might be extra zealous and have begun it. But if your child's not getting it, speak first to the teacher. Make sure that maybe you're not understanding, your child's not understanding that's what he's getting, but they should be getting it. And if they're not, be in touch with us. You'll see that'll be in the follow up email, it'll be in the last slide. It's very easy. Education at nbn.org.il. That's the email, just like goes to Aviva. Education at nbn.org.il. Spell out, and briefly in bullet points or whatever, what's happening. And so we can help you and we can be in touch with who needs to be in touch with. I'm going to add a second thing and then we'll move on. The Ministry of Education, has a lot of different branches, and there is a branch that's called Agaf Olim. There's a whole department nationwide with different departments throughout the country for Olim specific. So there are contact people. They are there to make sure that your child is getting what they should get. Now, it's not a lot. The 6 hours we know is not a lot, and only for 1 year, but at least that they should be getting.
And it's not that the school is being evil or doesn't want to help. It's just sometimes, especially in outside of the big Ole feeder areas, they just really don't know. And part of my job is to make a shidduch between the school and the Ministry of Education's Ole department and just get them together for a conversation and fill in the blanks and figure out what needs to be done for your child's success.
Thank you. So, this slide here, we're talking about other possible sources of assistance. What this means is not in place of those she'otalim, but in addition to, because as you can imagine, any extra assistance your child gets in, if it's learning Hebrew, if it's doing homework together, if it's just playing a game in Hebrew, it's going to be something that's going to help your child move forward. Okay. So some schools have benot shirut, have young women, sometimes it's young men, who are doing their national service in the school. And those are great resources, not to do the shotolim. They're not professional teachers, but to have a one on one with your child twice a week, to go over homework, to practice reading, all sorts of things. And hopefully, there'll be a nice bond, which is also important because you can imagine as a child sitting in a room in a classroom and not understanding can be really difficult. So having one-on-one with a nice smiling face is a really wonderful thing. Sometimes schools have volunteers that they can help you access. I once helped a child, an Ola child in a school. A teacher the year before had just retired and really was missing teaching, and the school reached out to that teacher, and she would come, I don't know, 3 times a week to tutor an hour each time, tutor the Olim children. So these are ideas that you need to be bringing up as possibilities with your school contact. Okay, private tutoring, now that of course costs money, but it's I hopefully you all did budget for it. Of course, it depends on your children's age, how much tutoring they need. Sometimes when they're young, really young, you don't want to spend the money on the tutoring. You want to spend it on the chugim, the extracurricular activities, which is a painless way, so to speak, of learning a language. If your child loves art, if your child loves a sport, those are things that are not so language heavy. It's a chance for him or her to make friends, but also to learn the language both as the person who's running the chug, the madrich, the person who's running the extracurricular activity, will be speaking and explaining, but also with the other children and making friends and practicing their Hebrew that way. So sometimes, I mean, if the sky's the limit as far as budget, do both. But if the sky's not the limit, which it probably isn't for most of us, then sometimes you want to have both. But if they're older, you might need to give more tutoring because academics are obviously more advanced. And then lastly, you want to see, and Aviva mentioned that before, you want to see what the community offers. Does the city where your child lives have after school homework clinic for Olim? There are cities that do that. Armiel, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have soldiers who would be helping Olim with their homework every day. What else is anything else offered? You can check that. You know that every city or every municipality has a gaf chinuch. It's not the Department of Education within the larger Department of Education. It's the municipality or city hall's own education department, and you would want to find out there what they offer Olim children in the city where your children live. If you're in an area where there's a lot of Anglos, then you would expect it to be perhaps tailored to Anglo children, or at least Anglo friendly, so to speak. But places where there's not a lot of English speakers, it might be something after school where the predominant language is Russian. Is that going to help your child? Is it not? You need to look into it and see how your child's going to feel and learn in that situation. You might have more ideas. I'd love to hear, we would love to hear if you have more ideas. Um, Before we move on, are there any questions um, that are coming up about what we're speaking now?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay,
Anyone?
okay. So we will go to the next slide, and that's you, Aviva.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
So the Bagrut exam are matriculation exams taken mostly in 11th and 12th grade, although there will be a few tests in 10th grade. There's a differentiation between external tests and internal tests. The internal tests are given by and graded by the schools, whereas the external tests are graded and designed by the Ministry of Education itself. They're generally needed for acceptance to colleges and universities in Israel. And in fact, if there are certain cases where a high enough average on the matriculation exams will exempt somebody from taking college entrance exams called the psychometrics, depending on what subject they want to study and how high their grades are. So Ministry of Education gives hakalot, or leniencies, for lack of a better word, to Olim students. They are available for kids for 10 years or until age 23, whichever is later. However, it only begins for kids who made Aliyah starting from first grade. So if your child made Aliyah into kindergarten, they will not be eligible for these benefits. So there's 3 levels. Level A are kids who made Aliyah in grades 1 through 3. B is for grades 4 through 8. And level C is through the grades 9 through 12. As you would expect, the leniencies for level C, the kids who came at the later age, are much more, there are more of them than for level A. Now these exams cover all the subjects, even gym. There's fitness tests that you could take. If a child, like my daughter has asthma, so she couldn't take the fitness test, but she had to write a paper about a gym subject instead. So they do work with the kids. So you don't have to be an excellent athlete to get a good mark on the test. The subjects are divided up by units. So let's say math, you could take 3 units, 4 units, or 5 units. Different subjects can be up to 10 units, like physics, or I don't remember what else. I'm not that kind of kid who gets the 10 units, so I'm not that familiar with it.
There's
Um,
English translation, by the way, a translation like
right,
a yeah.
right. And they actually say that the English translation Bagrut, that highest unit of Bagrut for English, is not for Olim. It's more for Israelis because of the way it's built. But whatever. So students need to take at least a total of 21 units and pass at least one of these exams on a 5-unit level to receive a full matriculation certificate to that Bagrut. As we mentioned, the Bagrut certificate and scores often determine acceptance not only to academic institutions, but to elite military units and job prospects.
I'm going to add here, we have an article, we'll get the link to that that spells this out really well. You need to be proactive with your child's school. Don't wake up the week before the Bagrut exam and remember, oi, I'm going to talk to them about what leniency my child's going to get because that's too late. Special things have to be ordered. And you might think that the school should be on top of that. And they would be if the child started in 10th grade and now is doing the Bagrut in 11th grade. But they won't
Exactly.
necessarily be on top of that if your child made Aliyah in 3rd or 4th grade. it's going to be something you need to speak about with the school. They have to put it in place, but you need to be your child's advocate about that as well. And there's really no reason not to use these leniencies and every reason to use them. It doesn't show up on the what you call the Bagrut certificate that they used, that they weren't Ola and used leniencies.
It
It
just
just
shows the grade.
it just improves their grades.
Mm.
I'm going to add another thing, and I don't know the ages of your children, of the people who are participating, or this is being recorded. People are going to be listening to it later. But making a child making Aliyah in the older years, right, in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, can be a lot of pressure. How in the world are they going to succeed in the Bagrut? The Bagrut is a big thing in Israel. That's using the Bagrut grade that you get, your average helps you get into different study tracks in universities. I'm going to say, don't worry. I mean, I'm not telling your children to not study or telling you as parents to tell your children not to study, but there are many, many, many Israeli kids who just goof off during high school for no good reason. And your children, oh, thank you, Aviva. And your children
I
have,
went back and took the math, but
okay, good. So you're an
after I
example.
finished
Okay.
your Lumi,
Okay.
yeah,
And your children have every reason not to necessarily get a good grade. I'm talking about those who are coming in the higher grades. And there are so many ways in place to improve your Bagrut grade. If it means redoing the Bagrut, if it means taking what's called a preparatory course, a machina before you're in the army, in the university, and so on. So the whole school system, and maybe we should have started with that, is very different in Israel in so many ways. One of them also being, although you need to succeed academically for your future studies,
not the end
um,
all be
it's
all.
not the end all be all. Your child, as an OLED, can certainly shine and excel in things other than studies, and that's very important. They know how to hike. They're really a good friend. The Israeli school system puts emphasis on
Independence.
that. Independence, thank you. And there's ways to improve your grades for your future after the army. And lastly, if you were to choose, and I know in North America, the big question is when you're sending your child to a private school, a high school, choosing the school, well, where do the kids go to college? That is not the question in Israel. The question in Israel is where do the kids go in the army, or what Shirut Leumi placements are they having? And that's what things are focused on. Everything is, don't forget, pushed off by a number of years, which gives a very different perspective in general. Before
So
we
I
move,
just want to zip through some of the hakalots. We did have a question about it.
okay,
So there are certain subjects that you could take a special Oleh Hadash exam, a version of the exam that does need to be ordered in advance. Everyone, all Olim get the 25% extra time for all written exams. Depending on the level, if it's A, B, or C, you can have the test read in Hebrew that they need to still answer in English. Or you can request in advance through the school. Your child can ask for it. Don't forget, this is already 11th and 12th graders in Israel. Parents don't really get involved. I mean, they're involved, but it's a conversation that's held between the student and the teacher, not necessarily the parent. The parents can be in the background and be the kid's cheerleader, but things are really done by that grade. The kids are the ones having this conversation. So they have a choice to take the special OLE version or take it in English in some subjects. If they take the full regular Israeli subject, the regular Israeli version of the exam, they get extra 15 points if they're level B or C, meaning they made Aliyah from fourth grade and up. And kids who made Aliyah in first through third grade would get an extra 10 points on that test. And it doesn't say they got an extra 10 points because they're an OLET. It'll just say they got 100. The fact that they got a 90 or an 85 and got extra points is not shown anywhere. So it is helpful. And somebody asked how to request these leniencies. They need to be automatic. You just need to, your child just needs to be in touch with the mechanech is like a main teacher who kind of coordinates all the other classes, which we'll get to, and just make sure that they know what their plans are, which types of tests they want to take. If they want to take English, in English when available, the OLE version when available, or the regular Israeli test, and make sure that the school is mindful of the fact that this is what they are eligible for.
okay. My fingers keep on moving the slides. Thank you, Aviva. Quickly, we're going to move through the school calendar. The school calendar kind of gives the rhythm to the school year. First of all, school always starts on September 1st in Israel. Always, there's an asterisk on the always, and it ends for the younger grades, it ends June 30th.
Yes.
And for the, I'm trying to remember how many days are in June. And for the middle school and high school, it ends on June 20th. The asterisk is because certain school systems, the Haredi school systems, would go, perhaps they will have a different school calendar, which they're Atzmai schools. They will follow their own school calendar. They will follow the same type of calendar that the higher yeshivas have, which are called Zmanim. But otherwise, the other school systems work as what I just said. And, the as I'm sure you've noticed, the holidays here are the Jewish holidays, and there's a lot of days off during the Chagei Tishrei, during the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. The intermediate days of Sukkot, the intermediate days of Pesach are always uh, off of school. That's time typically when families do a lot of vacationing, hiking, or is it traveling or whatever, and people take vacation
Hanukkah.
days then. And Hanukkah, sorry, of course, Hanukkah. There is school on the first day of Hanukkah, and then the rest of the week, the rest of the Hanukkah days, also the children have off.
Except
Um,
for the Chinuch Hatzmai schools, which don't have a Hanukkah.
Thank you. There's other days that the schools have off as well, which would be Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day. Yom HaShoah is half a day of school. Lag BaOmer,
No school on Erev holidays.
that is correct as well. Lag BaOmer is now a school day. For a long time, it wasn't. There's been a reform. It's gone back and forth, back and forth. There might be changes again, but that's what it is right now. Fridays, is there school on Friday? Depends on where you live. There are certain areas that have school on Fridays. It's always a shorter day, and there's some schools that do not have school on Fridays. I'm sure, as you know, if you're moving at some point to another city, you're gonna find out also, but you can ask ahead of time so you know. Another interesting, I put this in the school calendar year, so to speak. It's not really, but it is shayach, but it is related, is on special days during the school year, whether it's Yom HaShoah, whether it's Yom HaZikaron, which is half a day as well, whether it's Rosh Chodesh, if it's a religious school, kids come to school in white shirts. I don't think that anything happens if they come without a white shirt, but your child might feel a little different. So you should try and remember that. I'm certain that many parents do forget, but many children remind their parents because sometimes kids are more yakim and more on the ball than their parents. But that is pretty standard. It doesn't have to be a button-down shirt. It could be a white T-shirt. And The other thing is about registration. It can be early. Registration for school for the next school year opens up between December and March, depending on the age, depending on the school. You need to keep your eyes, on the press, so to speak. So you'll hear, and for the older kids who are applying to high school,
Or middle
you
school, depending
or
on the
middle
age.
school, thank you. You want to find that information out ahead of time, which is really rough for Olim because they're still just really, for sure, you guys are just trying to figure things out. Now you're telling me I have to think about, I mean, if your child's staying in the same school and just feeding into the same school, fine. But if they need to switch schools because of their age, um, it's, whoa, another thing to deal with. But we're giving you a heads up here. And lastly, the cutoff date for first grade, it's important to know, is December 31st, except perhaps in some of the Atzmai schools where it might be something different. Now, I have heard a lot of talk about this being changed. It's going to be Aleph Tevet. It's going to be December something else. But right now, that's what the cutoff date is. That means that if your child is born um, after December 31st, they'll be going into the first grade. Okay. Now excuse me, and Aviva, you explain it better than me, please. Um, for Olim children as well as for non-Olim children, there are parents who prefer to keep their children in kindergarten for an extra year. It's something in Israel that's really pretty common when your child is born on the borderline age group.
Right. So like October, I think it's like October 1st that it's easier to request it. If your kid's a little bit older, born earlier in the year, and you really feel they're not ready, you could speak to their ganenet, the kindergarten teacher, and discuss the options. So on the other hand, skipping grades, they don't really do here. It's very, very rare to see that.
That is correct. And there is a very developed system of חינוך, פסיכולוגים חינוכיים, educational psychologists. Those are psychologists who work within the school system from kindergarten and up. It's developed, and any decisions about should we keep the child back a year? Does the child need help? Do they need a special, especially language help or something? That's done in conjunction with the kindergarten or school psychologist who can be a big help in a lot of things.
It's not
Uh,
just the parent's decision.
that is correct. Okay. Sometimes they work with the parents as well, if in the framework of helping the child. Um, but it's also they come in and do look at the classrooms and so on. Are there any questions so far? Okay, so we have some phrases that are helpful to understand what they mean. The first two, Vad Horim and Vad Kita. The Vad Horim is the parents' committee. It's kind of like the PTA in Israel because it's school wide. You can have, depending where it is, it's often it can be more than it would be more than one parent per age group. And I think that probably as Olim parents, it's not going to be something that you're going to volunteer for at the beginning because you need to, as parents representatives of the broader, wider population in the school, and certainly you as a parent can speak to your representative in the Vad Horim. They operate as the liaison between the school and the parent body, and they are supposed to support the needs or the wants or the desires of the student body of the parents, what they want. They're there to support the school in ways that to support the parents and the student body in ways that the school sometimes cannot do. The Vad Kita is something much smaller. That's like the class committee. Um, my knowledge is it's usually more than one parent. They help with
Collect
whatever the
money for present for the teacher.
it could be as small as that and maybe as insignificant as that. It could also be attending the school outings with the class. It could be all sorts of things. And if you as a parent feel confident and actually speak Hebrew, it might be a good thing for you to join, not by yourself, only if it's a number of people, because you don't want to, you're still learning, but that's a way to also get to know the school system and other parents in your community. You want to continue, Aviva?
Sure. So WhatsApp groups. Um, Although I know their WhatsApp is not that popular in the States, I don't know what parents use to be in contact with each other, if that's even a thing now. I left 11 years ago, so I'm not really sure. But here, every class has a WhatsApp group, and that's just what every parent needs, another WhatsApp group. But there'll be a WhatsApp group, sometimes a WhatsApp group with the teacher and a WhatsApp group without the teacher. So there will be a lot of things going on. Just you can, just check it once in a while if you're trying to mute your groups. Just check it once in a while so your kid isn't missing out on something important because you didn't look at the group. There could be a class phone or email list. It's a great way for you to make friends as well. I always said when my kids were were younger, it was much easier for me to make friends when moving to a new place with little kids than once they got older and they didn't need to organize anything. So the next step after kids is a dog. That's a great icebreaker. So when you get to that point, talk to me about getting a dog and making friends that way. But through your kids class, most of my friends at the beginning when my kids were younger were their classmates' parents. So it is a way to find something in common and a way to like get in the door to meet people. Tzil Shnati is the yearly trip. This is not your trip to the museum. I remember I made Aliyah as a kid, and I remember our first trip. I came home. I said, "Ma, in America, you could die of boredom. Here, you could die if you take a wrong step off the side of a mountain." I was exaggerating, but it is really out there. It's like climbing. It's sleeping out in sleeping bags under the stars. It's not an American trip. It's the younger classes are not overnights, and as you get older, this trip will be a little bit more extreme, like overnight, maybe 2 nights in the desert, further away from a center of where people live. But the cost of the Tiyul Shnati is already built into the parent payments for school for the year. And sometimes they'll schedule them and then change it and reschedule it. They'll send you a list what you need to bring. And some kids are hesitant to go, even long-term time Israelis, because they have to share a room with the kid or share a tent with other kids. They don't know what to expect. They'll haven't been away from home, but I think it's a really great bonding experience, and it's a great way to learn Hebrew in other situations. And you should um, be behind your kid going. I wouldn't say force anybody, but it's definitely something that they should go. Uh,
Encourage your children to step out of their comfort zone if at all possible, because it's not just everything that Aviva said. It's also it's ubiquitous kind of Israel experience, and Israeli children really do learn to love the land through their feet.
and
So
it's building up
by
to the
hiking
army.
and obviously you don't force your child, but it is something that's certainly worth to encourage.
Okay. Aruchat Eser is a meal at 10 o'clock, roughly. And it's not like a snack. I taught in America and all the kids would bring a bag of chips or a bag of baby carrots for the morning. Here it's an actual sandwich. And they eat their lunch and then they have some free time to play outside and then it's a time for an actual meal, which is great if you don't have time to get them have a really good breakfast in the morning before leaving. Uniforms. So uniforms are not the same as I assume by now you figured that out. Most schools that have uniforms, it'll be a shirt, either a t-shirt or a polo shirt with the school's emblem on it, and not like the school uniforms that you have to have a certain pair of pants and a certain shirt and maybe a tie and a check skirt if depending on the school. So the uniforms here are much more chill than in America. And they're much more comfortable thinking for kids' comfort, the scratchy shirt that you need to wear, but um, they're available. You can go to the t-shirt stores in your neighborhood, you tell them which school it is, and they'll already know which emblem you need.
And the price of the shirt, the emblem is included in it. Just saying, don't let them charge you extra for the embossing of the school emblem.
Um,
We
and
can,
parent-teacher communication,
we-
it's phone calls and it's WhatsApps. When I first moved here, I taught for a little bit, and I was shocked to see on my pay slip it was a certain amount of money towards phone calls to parents. So that was shocking. So yes, I wouldn't call your kid's teacher at 11 o'clock at night, but you could WhatsApp them and say, please call me back at your convenience.
I always say to Olim, just preface if you're going to call them, preface the call. This is, my name is Sippy. I am Naomi's mother. I wanted to discuss a few things about Naomi. When is a good time to speak? Is this a good time to speak? But they do expect you to call. It's not. That's the norm here. And if that seems a little bit too informal and friendly to you, you really, if you want to be in touch with your teacher, that's the way you have to do it. So with a kid's teacher.
In America, the parents never had the teacher's phone numbers. If you needed them, you would call the school and leave a message. The fact that you're receiving the teacher's number means something. It doesn't mean call them at 11 o'clock at night or 20 minutes before candlelighting. But, I always prefer to send a WhatsApp first to ask when it's convenient. And if the
Um,
person doesn't respond, then make a short phone call.
I want to add something else that we don't have listed here, but parent teachers conferences, they happen in December around Hanukkah time, and they happen again before Pesach vacation usually. Um, don't wait. If you have not met, I mean, Hanukkah's coming up. We can't believe how quickly, and still, if you have not yet met your children's teachers, their mechanechim, why did we not get to that? Did I miss a slide? Okay,
Hmm.
maybe I did.
Okay, let's pretend it
Um,
was there.
okay. Your mechanech is your child's. I've even had a long conversation how to translate that because a mechanech can be it really means an educator. That's the exact literal translation. It's your child's homeroom teacher, but it's so much more than that. Because yes, the mechanech is the one, or mechanechet is the one who collects the money or passes out the note, the whatever, all the administrative things. But they also have hours per week that they do. It's called shat mechanech. They have at least one and probably more that they do what they want in those. If it's discussing current events, if it's discussing why you should be kind to each other, if it's talking about an Olim's experience, what it means to be new Olet, it could be so many things. And
And they also coordinate between all the different sub teachers of different
thank you,
subjects. So if you have
thank you.
any issue, you just need to make that one stop with the mechanecha or mechanech, and they will be your point person.
I urge you all to have already met the mechanech or mechanechet prior to those parent teachers. Don't wait necessarily until Hanukkah. The teacher might say, what is, hopefully they're going to say, of course, that's a wonderful idea. But if they say, well, what do you want to meet me about? Just my child's, we're Olim Chadashim and I don't want to wait another month. I just want to discuss how you see how's my daughter doing? How's my son doing? I have a few questions that I'm trying to understand, okay, put it out there. It's really only for the good of your child, and that's part of being the child's advocate and being proactive.
And fun fact, kids are not only welcome at parent-teacher conferences, it's often encouraged to bring
Expected, yeah,
them.
exactly. Okay, so
There's no
we
secrets. Even report cards, the teachers sit with the kids to discuss report cards grades before sending them home. Kids shouldn't be surprised.
so just really quickly as far as Hebrew learning, I mean, it's not obviously if your child's Hebrew stays at subpar, they're going to be limited in their academics. So it's really important to continue learning Hebrew as a family, hopefully which you started prior to the Aliyah. It's really important to budget for extra tutorial sessions that you should expect that you're going to need that next year as well. And it's really important for you to advocate for your child. I'm just as an example, if your child brings home, a page of 15 history questions or Bible questions, things that are not mathematical equations that you don't need Hebrew for. It's a great accomplishment if your child answers one of them at the beginning of the year, two of them a little bit further on, and five of them in the middle of the year. Don't accept you if your child's teacher doesn't understand that, you need to have that conversation with your child's teacher and you need to be encouraging your child. Okay, let's do two questions today. That's amazing. And not looking at all those that they didn't answer, not because your child's not capable, but because in Hebrew, your child is currently not capable. And you need to be one, set realistic expectations for you in your mind for your children, but also set that for your children. It's really, really important. Sometimes it's the kids who excelled in school prior to Aliyah, they have the hardest time because they want to continue excelling. And as they're not going to be able to excel academically at the beginning. Maybe in math, okay, but in other language heavier topics, it just takes a while. So you need to state that to your child. You need to say, I don't care about the grades. I want you to try your hardest. I want you to do your best, but you're right now, this year is about making friends. It's about learning to understand the school system. It's about improving your Hebrew and slowly getting up to where you need to be. And if there's homework that's just impossible to do and your child's teacher is still expecting him to do it or her to do it, you need to be in touch with the teacher. Okay, so that is an unrealistic expectation for you as a parent to have on your child, for the child's teacher to have, and hopefully for your child, his or herself. And I always say, be your child's cheerleader. They come home and they had a hard day. Let them, first of all, let them get it out. Okay, it's not simple to sit in a room and not understand. So let them kind of spill it out, but then ask them good questions. Say, did you make any friends today? Did you play with somebody during recess? Obviously, depending on their age, okay? Did you know which book to take out when one of the classes began? And anything that they answer yes to, please help them feel what an accomplishment it is. I'm going to remind you as Olim, and hopefully you also felt that too. When you finished your bank appointment and opening your bank account, that was a Oh my gosh, you probably felt like you ran a marathon. So I hope that you stood up and said, I did it. I am amazing. This is amazing that I was able to do it because it is and was. Or your first time you got on a public bus and knew how to pay. Those are all things that we go back to being kindergartners when we make Aliyah, when we immigrate to a new country. And your children too are going back to be nursery schoolers as far as understanding nothing. So please cheer them on and give them that encouragement. It is really, really important. Um, we have a bunch of resources. We don't have to talk about each one. You'll get these links in the slideshow that will be sent to you, and vocabulary, general information, bug root leniencies, et cetera, et cetera. So keep it handy. Sometimes school registration, you can just peek at it, but you're going to need it at some point. Okay. Oh, ooh, okay. I guess I put that on the wrong slide. Aviva, you can
Okay.
go ahead. Okay.
So who do you turn to for any questions if you're having difficulties, if your child's having difficulty, if you just want to know what's going on in the school, how your kid is doing in between, like Tippy mentioned. So the in-school resources is the Mechanechet, your child's main educator or coordinating teacher, whatever we decided to call it in English. Schools also have a yoetzet, which is an advisor. Um, some have a school psychologist on staff part-time, all the time, 1 day a week, shared with their schools. And schools in heavily Olim areas, not necessarily Anglo Olim, but have the areas that have a lot of Olim, they may have also an Olim coordinator. And you can speak with any of these people to try and figure out what you need to find out, how to help your child, if you have questions about the curriculum, anything else. Then there's also the municipality Olim Klita coordinator, which Sippy mentioned earlier. It's a division of each municipality that has are heavy on Olim that can help with things like signing up for municipal taxes, signing the kids up for school, and issues with schools. You can call us at Nefesh B'Nefesh. Our number is star 3680. We answer our hotline on Sundays through Thursdays from 9 to 5, or email us for specifically educational questions at education@nbn.org.il, or general Aliyah questions, answers at nbn.org.il. We have a uh, separate department for higher education, but so we're not going to go into that here.
Okay. Again, you don't need to write this down because you're going to be getting them. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you, Aviva. And now, are there questions? If somebody's comfortable, if you have questions, if you're comfortable unmuting your mic, you can ask a question. You can raise your hand. You can type it in the chat um, about things that we didn't cover, about things that we covered and weren't clear. We're happy. Okay, Melissa, hi. Do you want to?
Hi.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you.
Um, I'm sorry, I'm not in a place where I can turn my camera on,
I know how
but
that is.
hopefully you can hear me okay. So there is an exam coming. My child is in Kita Bet, and
Thank you.
there's an exam coming up. In America, we'd call it gifted and talented. And I guess I don't really understand what that looks like here. And for New Olim, if we can delay the test or if that's one of the leniencies we can ask for. So what
Oh, okay,
what
Melissa,
is
sure.
it
I'm happy
in
to
a
explain.
nutshell?
I'm happy to explain. It's something that is done nationwide. Um, and they're tested. I thought it was in
Second
third grade.
grade, second
Oh,
grade.
second grade, okay. But you can be tested later as well. You can be added to it. They take the kids out of school half a day at the beginning, once a week, for extra classes in different topics, and it goes on through high school even. And your child is expected to make up whatever schoolwork they miss. It's not really a program that's appropriate for Olim, for brand new Olim, because of the language. That being said, if you believe your child is gifted and exceptional, I mean, every child is gifted and exceptional, but if you believe your child is gifted in an academic way, then speak with the school next year and see, can he or she be tested. There's some children who it's the And by the way, they don't have to go through the test. I hope that your school is not going to force your child to go through the test, so to speak. Theoretically, everybody is tested, but I don't know how they relate that to Olim children. It's a very, very, very small percentage. I think the top 5% go to another day of testing, and then the top 5% of the top 5% get accepted. So eh, that's what that is. That's what that means. Again, I can't imagine an OLED child succeeding in their first year at all because it's going to be in Hebrew.
It's a lot of
And
pressure too.
it's a lot of
Pressure.
a lot of pressure, which is why if I were you, I would speak with the school about can we please exempt my child from taking the test this year. Catherine.
Hi, I have like basically a follow-on question. My kids are in Gimel and Dalid. They missed the test last year in Bet because we came this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're trying to figure out how they can take the test. My kids speak pretty fluent Hebrew. Their dad's Israeli. But reading and writing is a little bit behind grade level. And we're trying to understand, can they take the test in English or not? And I'm, reading on the educational website, the difference between taking, I think it's an Aleph or a Bet level test and different levels of leniency or support that are given to Olim children to be able to take the test. I don't know if you guys
No,
know all the
not this.
nuances of all that.
So I'm not familiar, but I do not believe those leniencies have anything to do with these tests.
It's not
Those
elementary school,
leniencies,
it's just bugger.
those leniencies are for the matriculation high school exams. Okay, I'm
Okay.
just going to put out there that if your child does or doesn't participate, that's not something that's going to follow them. I mean, it might help them in life because they've had different experiences, but it's not going to be on. I remember growing up when my teachers would all threaten us. It's going to go on your cumulative record. I don't know if they still say that. It's been a long time since I've been in school in the States, but it's not a cumulative record in this country. So if your child isn't part of the gifted and exceptional, even though they are gifted and exceptional, it doesn't mean anything. It means that your child's going to have a great experience if they do that or not, but it doesn't mean anything for their future. So I'm
But
just
there'll
putting it
also
out
be
there.
other opportunities later, like in
Thank
middle
you.
school, there'll be other tests for, let's say, high level math where they could take a college level course, type of things like that.
And as they get further on in their studies, the different, you take 4.5.3 points of certain topics and so on, that will have some type of influence. So again, I'm not sure exactly what from what side of the tracks the questions are coming. As far as I really want my child to do it or I really don't want my child to do it. I can't imagine that. I do not know of any leniences. There's not going to be leniences. They're not going to teach this in English. They're not going to let them do it in English. And if their Hebrew and writing is not up to par, they're not going to pass it either. So it's a bit of a shame to put them, in my opinion, through that in that pressured situation. I do believe there's a way to be retested, but I wouldn't do that to my child in the first year after Aliyah. But the way to find out more would be to be in touch. There's a whole kind of branch of that. There's people in charge of it. I don't know. You have to ask the school who to be in touch with.
Okay, and is it the school's responsibility to secure them like a spot to take a late, a year late or 2 years late test?
I don't have those details. But again, if you're telling me your children speak Hebrew, but their reading and writing is not up to par, they're not going to. I'm just telling you, it's not as simple. It's not, let's take the top 20% of the school, and it's really a very, very small percentage of students that that get accepted. And I've never heard of them. I don't know of anything in place that would give extra consideration for Olim.
Okay.
So, okay,
Yep, appreciate it.
sure.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm just going to address one of the questions that was written in ahead of time. Can we expect is it a can we expect our children's teacher to speak English with our children in class? And the answer to that is no. One, the teacher might not feel comfortable speaking in English. There's many Israelis who do, but there's many Israelis who don't. And two, that would not be an expectation I would have it wouldn't work in the classroom setting. You can, again, depending on the school, depending on the age, I have heard of teachers setting up a buddy for your child. Maybe somebody can help translate a little bit, but again, you have to be careful because you don't want your child to be dependent specifically on the buddy and the buddy to feel that they have to do that. But no, I would not expect the teacher to speak English, and certainly not to speak English in the classroom. I have heard where, teachers do help some teachers who are comfortable in English might once in a while be helping in English, but that would not be an expectation. That would be a bonus point. Any other questions? Clarifications? Okay. So we thank you all for taking your time in this late hour. It's always a tricky, what time are we going to do this, because people are putting their kids to sleep, obviously. So we do this later than we usually do it. I thank you very much for joining us. And, wishing you and your children a successful year, and give them a hug every day. Tell them you love them, and
Yeah, you're
be their
proud of them.
tell them you're proud of them, and be as empathetic as possible, because it's great to make Aliyah. It's hard to immigrate to a new country with a new language, and not just the language. Everything is different here.
Even
So
the way you raise your hand in class.
and that's
It's one
true.
thing I always say.
Who
I don't know if the parents know.
no, you want to show us how you raise your hand in class
So
in
in
Israel?
America, you raise your hand like this. In Israel, you raise your hand like this.
That is
And
correct. Thank you. That's a great example. Okay. Things are very different. So it will take a while to learn it all. You two are learning it. Your children are learning it. And just give them a warm hug, and virtual and an actual hug. And we are here to assist you. Be in touch with us with questions that you may have about this, and just a plug about anything post Aliyah that's not necessarily related to your children's school experience in the educational system. We're here to answer if you're frustrated because you can't get an appointment for something. Call us. We're here to help you, okay? For the trivial things and for the less trivial things. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aviva, so much
thank
for
you,
assisting
Sippy.
this evening. And good night to everybody. There is something in the chat. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night, everybody.